The film opens with a solemn narration on screen. It tells us that in 1815, Napoleon was overthrown and exiled by the people of France, cast away to a remote island. In the aftermath, anyone who dared to support him was hunted down and sentenced to death. Not long after, on a dark night in the Mediterranean Sea, disaster strikes. A ship bursts into flames, swallowed by the waves. Amid the chaos, a young sailor named Edmund dives into the water and pulls a drowning woman to safety. He brings her aboard, but instead of praise, he is met with anger. The ship's captain, Danglars, is furious that Edmund acted on his own without permission. As punishment, he has Edmund locked below deck. Danglars then seizes a letter the woman was carrying. To his shock, it is a secret message from Napoleon himself, and the woman is revealed to be one of his followers. The next morning, after regaining consciousness, the woman pleads for her letter to be returned, but Danglars only demands money in exchange, threatening to expose her. With no gold and no choice, she leaves in despair. Eventually, the ship docks in Marseille. Before disappearing into the city, the woman thanks Edmund for saving her life. When Edmund asks for her name, she simply calls herself Angélie, then urges him to forget she ever existed, insisting that their paths will never cross again. Not long after, the ship's owner, Monsieur Morel, summons both Danglars and Edmund to question their delayed arrival. Danglars wastes no time blaming Edmund for saving a stranger at sea, claiming that it cost them valuable time. But to everyone's surprise, Morel sides with Edmund, praising his courage instead of condemning it. In a bold decision, Morel fires Danglars on the spot, and promotes Edmund to captain. Edmund can hardly believe what he is hearing. Overjoyed, he rushes to share the news with the woman he loves, Mercedes. Their relationship has been a secret, since she comes from a wealthy family and he is only a sailor. But now, with the rank of captain, Edmund finally feels worthy. He decides it is time to ask for her hand in marriage. He also visits his father, Louis, a humble servant working for the noble Morcer family. Louis is moved to tears, proud of his son's achievement, and reminds Edmund to thank the Morcerfs for supporting his education at the Naval Academy. When Edmund meets the family to share the news, their son Fernand, Edmund's childhood friend, smiles and congratulates him. Edmund believes his life is finally falling into place. But fate has already set darker plans in motion. Moments later, Mercedes arrives at the celebration. She is Fernand's cousin, and the three of them enjoy the night together. When the festivities end, Fernand, Mercedes, and Edmund set sail on a short trip. During the voyage, Edmund finally opens up to his friend, revealing that he plans to marry. Fernand is surprised, unaware that Edmund had someone he loved. But when Edmund proudly says he will marry Mercedes, Fernand is stunned. He has secretly loved her for years, and now he realizes the woman he wants has chosen someone else. Time passes, and the wedding day arrives. Edmund and Mercedes stand together in a church, ready to begin their new life. But just as the ceremony is underway, the doors burst open. A group of officers storms in and arrests Edmund without warning. Fernand, a lieutenant in the military, tries to intervene, but he is powerless. Edmund is dragged away in front of everyone. At the prosecutor's office, Edmund is brought before a man named Villefort. Confused and terrified, Edmund demands to know why he has been arrested. Instead of answering, Villefort asks whether Edmund has any enemies. Edmund mentions his recent promotion, explaining that his former captain, Danglars, has despised him ever since. But Edmund insists he has done nothing wrong. Villefort then reveals the accusation. Someone has reported Edmund as a supporter of Napoleon, claiming that Edmund was carrying a secret letter from the exiled leader. The letter was found hidden in Edmund's diary aboard the ship. Edmund is shocked. He has never seen the letter before. Then he remembers the woman he rescued at sea. The message must have belonged to her. He explains that her name is Angélie. The moment Villefort hears the name, he grows tense and uneasy. He orders Edmund held for further questioning, then summons witnesses from the ship. Danglars and another sailor, Cadorus, are brought in. Fernand also arrives, hoping to observe the situation. Villefort presents the letter to the room and states that both Danglars and Cadorus have testified against Edmund, claiming he truly serves Napoleon. The charges are serious, and anyone defending Edmund could destroy their own reputation. Fernand hesitates, torn between loyalty and ambition. Then, driven by jealousy over Mercedes, he betrays Edmund and confirms the accusation. With no one left to defend him, Edmund is thrown into prison. His descent begins here. This is the Count of Monte Cristo. Soon after, in a secret location, Villefort visits his mistress, Victoria, who is heavily pregnant. To Edmund, she is a stranger, but here another truth is revealed. Angélie is also present, and she is Villefort's sister. Furious, Angeli confronts him, accusing Villefort of condemning an innocent man. Villefort claims he only did it to protect their family's honor. But Angeli does not believe him. She decides she will surrender herself and tell the truth to save Edmond. Angered and afraid of a scandal, Villefort loses control. In a moment of rage, he grabs Angeli by the throat and begins to strangle her. 4 years pass. Deep beneath the surface of the sea, in a remote island prison, Edmond rots in a cold underground cell. His hair is long, his clothes are filthy, and his spirit is barely holding on. Each day, the guards come only to check whether the prisoners are alive. That is Edmond's routine, day after day, year after year. Until one night, something breaks the silence. Edmond hears a faint tapping from inside his wall. Curious, he presses his ear against the stone. Suddenly, one of the bricks shifts. Using nothing more than a spoon, Edmond pries it loose. Behind the wall, he sees a glimpse of another prisoner. Before they can speak, footsteps echo through the hall. A guard is coming. The stranger quickly disappears. That night, Edmond pulls the brick out again and discovers a tunnel. Without hesitation, he crawls through. On the other side is the man he saw earlier, an elderly prisoner named Abbé Faria. Abbé reveals that he has spent 6 long years digging a tunnel in hopes of escaping, and by chance, he has broken through to Edmond's cell. If only he had help, he says, he might have escaped years ago. Edmond, desperate for purpose and freedom, agrees to join him. From that moment on, the two men begin digging together, spoonful by spoonful, night after night. Time passes, seasons change, and the years continue to march on. Abbé is no ordinary prisoner. He is a scholar, a man of knowledge, and he teaches Edmond everything he knows: languages, history, philosophy, mathematics. As their tunnel slowly grows, so does Edmond's mind. Hope returns to his heart, fueled by one dream: to see Mercedes again. One day, Abbé shares a secret. He tells Edmond the legend of the Templar treasure, a vast fortune once seized in war. In 1307, King Philip ordered the Templars to be arrested and their riches confiscated. But the treasure vanished, and the Templars died one by one, taking its secret to the grave. Abbé then reveals the truth. He is the last student of the Templar order, and he knows exactly where the treasure is hidden, on the island of Monte Cristo. 10 more years pass. Then tragedy strikes. While digging, the tunnel collapses. The ground caves in, and Abbé is crushed by falling stone. Edmond drags him out, desperate to save him, but it is too late. With his final breaths, Abbé tells Edmond the exact location of the treasure. Moments later, he dies in Edmond's arms. When the guards discover the body, they place Abbé in a burial sack. But as soon as the guards leave, Edmond switches places with the corpse, climbing into the sack himself. 2 guards carry the body to the cliffs and throw the bag into the sea, unaware of who is inside. Edmond cuts himself free underwater and swims for his life. After more than 14 years in hell, he finally reaches the shore as a free man. Exhausted, Edmond returns to the Morcerf estate, searching for the life he once knew, but the house is silent and abandoned. A servant appears and orders him to leave. Edmond begs for news of his father, Louis. With a solemn voice, the servant explains that Louis took his own life after believing Edmond had died in prison. The news shatters him. Edmond then asks about Mercedes. The servant tells him she has married Fernand, and the two now live in Paris with their son. Broken and alone, Edmond walks away from the home that once filled him with hope. Now, he has nothing. But deep within him, something else begins to take root, something stronger than despair. Edmond wastes no time. With nothing left behind and nothing left to lose, he takes an empty ship from the harbor and sails toward Monte Cristo. Following Abbé's final instructions, he lands on the island and enters an ancient tomb hidden among the rocks. There, his fate changes forever. Inside the stone chamber, Edmond discovers mountains of gold and jewels, the legendary treasure Abbé had spoken of. In that moment, Edmond, once a broken prisoner, becomes a man with power, purpose, and a path to justice. 5 years pass. Somewhere in a quiet village, a priest visits Cadaris, who now lives in poverty, drowning in regret and misery. The priest places a diamond in Cadaris' hand, claiming it as a gift from Edmond before his death, a token of gratitude for being Edmond's only friend. Overwhelmed, Cadaris shakes his head and refuses the gem. He says he does not deserve such kindness. Instead, he confesses the truth. He reveals that Edmond was betrayed. Danglars was the one who plotted the lie, while Fernand supported it with false testimony so he could marry Mercedes. The only man who fought to save Edmond was their employer, Morel. But because of Danglars, Morel lost everything. After Edmond was declared dead, Morel was forced to rehire Danglars, only for Danglars to destroy him completely by sabotaging the company's ships. When Morel went bankrupt, Danglars bought all of his assets for a cheap price. Strangely, 2 months later, the missing ships returned, proving that it had all been a setup. But Danglars could not be punished, because he was protected by Prosecutor Villefort. Villefort's mistress Victoria later became Danglars' wife, and together they rose to wealth and power in the city. Meanwhile, Cadara stayed silent, too afraid to fight back. Anyone who opposed Danglars or Villefort ended up like Angeli. When the priest asks what happened to her, Cadara explains that Villefort ordered Danglars to kidnap Angeli and sell her to a brothel. The priest listens in silence, then rises to leave. But when he steps outside, his calm expression changes. The priest is Edmond in disguise. Now, with the truth laid bare, Edmond makes a vow. He will destroy every life that destroyed his. Edmond then searches for Angeli, and finds her weak, bedridden, and near death. He wants to take her to a hospital, but she refuses. Instead, she begs him to save a boy, the secret son of Villefort and Victoria. With her fading strength, she reveals the truth. Years ago, Angeli followed Victoria to Paris and discovered Villefort's hidden home. She planned to kill him. But before she could act, she heard Victoria screaming in labor. That night, Angeli watched Villefort carry a wooden chest into the garden and bury it. After he left, she dug it up. Inside was a newborn baby. Villefort intended to kill his own child. Horrified, Angeli abandoned her revenge and saved the baby instead. She left the infant at an orphanage, but before she could escape, she was captured and dragged back to the brothel. The next morning, Edmond goes to the orphanage. He meets the boy, now a young man named Andrea. Edmond tells him the truth, and offers him a chance, not just to survive, but to take revenge on the man who tried to erase him from the world. Burning with hatred for Villefort, Andrea agrees. 5 years pass. Fernand leaves the military and turns his full attention to politics. At his farewell ceremony, Mercedes and their son Albert stand proudly beside him. Watching from a distance, hidden in the crowd, is Edmond, silently observing the life that was stolen from him. On their way home after the ceremony, Fernand is suddenly robbed. Albert chases down the thief, but it is a trap. In a dark, empty alley, he is attacked and beaten by a group of thugs. Just before the final blow, a mysterious man steps in and defeats the attackers with ease. He calls himself the Count of Monte Cristo. Albert thanks him, unaware that the man behind the mask is Edmond. Moments later, Andrea appears from behind and strikes Albert, knocking him unconscious. As it turns out, the entire ambush was staged. The thieves are all paid men, hired by Edmond as part of a grand plan. Now wealthy and unrecognizable, he hides his identity behind a mask, a new title, and a new life as the Count of Monte Cristo. The next day, just as Edmond planned, Fernand and Albert arrive at the Count's grand estate to express their gratitude. Albert also returns a pistol that the Count accidentally left behind. But Edmond simply smiles and tells Albert to keep it, insisting he has plenty more. Inside, Edmond proudly shows them his massive firearm collection. They practice shooting together, and Fernand is amazed by the Count's incredible skill. Eventually, Fernand excuses himself, but Albert stays behind, curious to explore more of the Count's world. Before leaving, Fernand invites the Count to a hunting event the following week. Edmond refuses at first, explaining that he must host an Italian prince who is coming to visit. But Fernand insists and suggests bringing the prince along. Edmond finally agrees. While walking through the mansion, Albert hears a voice singing upstairs. He finds a beautiful young woman playing an instrument. Edmond arrives and introduces her as Haydée, his adopted daughter. Albert is immediately captivated and asks to meet her properly. Edmond agrees, but warns him to keep his distance. Haydée has suffered deeply. Her father was murdered, and she was sold into slavery as a child. She is still haunted by her past, and Edmond will not allow anyone to harm her again. After their introductions, Albert leaves. But the truth remains hidden from him. Haydée's father was killed by Fernand himself. Now she lives with one purpose: to take revenge. She, Edmond, and Andrea all share the same enemy and the same burning ambition: to destroy those who once destroyed them. A week later, Edmond and Andrea attend the hunting event together. In front of the nobles, Edmond introduces Andrea as Prince Cavalcanti of Italy. At that moment, Andrea sees his real father for the first time, Villefort, the man who buried him alive as a baby. After the hunt, Edmond instructs Andrea to get close to Danglars' daughter Eugenie. A greedy man like Danglars will welcome any suitor who looks wealthy and influential. Soon, Fernand introduces his wife to the Count of Monte Cristo. The moment Mercedes hears his voice, her heart freezes. She recognizes him. But Albert quickly calms her, reassuring her that the Count is a good man. Mercedes forces a smile, but in her eyes, fear and doubt begin to grow. On another evening, Danglars hosts a grand party and invites Edmond, Andrea, and Haydée as honored guests. During the event, Fernand shares the latest news. A major newspaper, L'Impartial, has just been bought by an Englishman named Halifax. Edmond immediately reacts. He calls Halifax his greatest rival, a criminal who spreads lies and manipulates public opinion through fake news. The statement leaves everyone at the table curious. As the guests begin to leave, Albert approaches Haydée and returns her hand fan, which she had accidentally forgotten. Edmond then invites Albert to attend a special dinner he plans to host soon, a gathering to which he has also invited the Danglars and Villefort families. But on the carriage ride home, Haydée discovers a secret message hidden inside the fan. It is a letter from Albert, asking her to meet him in a garden. The next day, Haydée goes to meet Albert. She lies and tells him she came without the Count's knowledge. They talk for a long while, and Haydée soon realizes that Albert truly cares for her. But when she returns, she learns that Albert and Mercedes will not be attending Edmond's dinner, although Fernand will be present. Edmond notices Haydée's change in behavior since she began seeing Albert. He reminds her of their mission, to focus on vengeance, not romance. That evening, Edmond hosts his carefully planned dinner at a familiar location, the very house where Villefort once buried his newborn child alive. When Villefort and Victoria arrive, they are stunned, recognizing the place immediately. During dinner, Edmond explains that he purchased the house after hearing rumors that it was haunted. He tells a chilling story about a nobleman who buried his baby here. Villefort and Victoria grow pale and anxious, while Danglars leans in with curiosity, wanting to hear more. Edmond claims that he even dug up a wooden chest from the garden below, but never opened it. Then, he leads the guests to the spot to open it together. Villefort and Victoria brace for the worst, terrified that Edmond may reveal their past. But when the chest is opened, it contains only cloth. No remains. No evidence.
Abracadabra!
Villefort and Victoria breathe in relief. For now. The following morning, suspicious and unsettled, Villefort decides to investigate the Count's background. He secretly meets with Halifax, hoping to uncover who this mysterious nobleman truly is. Halifax tells him that he despises the Count and has crossed paths with him in Italy. Villefort asks if the Count is truly as wealthy as he claims. Halifax confirms that the Count of Monte Cristo is the richest man in Italy. Satisfied, Villefort leaves, unaware of the truth. Halifax is not Halifax at all, but Edmond in another disguise, manipulating the entire narrative from both sides. Days later, L'Impartial publishes a shocking headline, claiming Danglars' fleet in Marseille has been stolen. Panic spreads, and his company's stock collapses. But Fernand receives word from the military port that all of Danglars' ships are still there. The newspaper story is a lie. Villefort urges Danglars to sue Halifax for defamation. But driven by greed, Danglars sees an opportunity. He wants to buy all of Halifax's stock while the price is low, then sue afterward to drive the price back up, making a fortune. There is only one problem. To execute his plan immediately, Danglars needs $500 million. Only one man can lend that amount, the Count of Monte Cristo. Danglars, Fernand, and Villefort rush to Edmond to ask for the loan. Edmond agrees, pretending to be on their side. Danglars offers collateral worth $200 million in assets. Edmond refuses at first, but Danglars insists it is a sign of friendship, so Edmond accepts. Danglars promises to return the full amount in 1 week. Villefort then declares that he will take Halifax to court and destroy him publicly. A week later, the long-awaited trial against Halifax is finally held. But just as the session begins, the judge receives news that Halifax is out of town. Instead, he has sent a representative to attend on his behalf. The day before, in the port of Marseille, Cadorus and his men secretly carried out a mission. Disguised as a priest, Edmond had ordered them to steal all of Danglars' ships. Now, back in the courtroom, the representative steps forward. The crowd gasps. Halifax's representative is none other than Andrea. Standing before the judge, Andrea declares that Danglars' entire fleet has indeed been stolen. He even urges the court to verify it with the port authorities. Then he reveals his true identity. He is the child Villefort once buried alive. As proof, he presents the cloth from the wooden chest, still bearing Villefort's fingerprints. Villefort panics and accuses Andrea of lying. Andrea responds coldly, warning him not to force his mother, who is also present in the courtroom, to confess the truth. Terrified, Villefort flees the courtroom in disgrace. Meanwhile, Danglars, now ruined and desperate, rushes to the Count of Monte Cristo to beg for more time to repay his debt. But Edmond refuses. He tells Danglars to run away from the city, because he no longer owns anything. All of his wealth now belongs to the Count. Danglars collapses in shock. At that moment, Edmond removes the mask of nobility and reveals his true identity. He is Edmond Dantes, the man Danglars helped destroy. Broken and humiliated, Danglars flees, with nothing left. Elsewhere in the courthouse, rage overtakes Andrea. Trapped by years of pain, he stabs Villefort to death. Guards immediately open fire, and Andrea falls beside the man who ruined his life.
De la part d'Angèle.
Haydée screams in grief. The one she saw as a brother is gone. In her sorrow, she blames Edmond, accusing him of poisoning Andrea's heart with vengeance. Edmond insists Andrea made his own choices, but Haydée refuses to listen. She calls Edmond a monster driven by hatred. Still shaken, Haydée writes to Albert, telling him to stay away from her. But Albert, already deeply in love, ignores the plea. He rushes to her home and confesses his feelings. He tells her he is willing to run away with her and live a new life together. Haydée hesitates, but her heart softens. She loves him too. Finally, she agrees to leave with him. Just as they are about to go, Edmond appears and blocks their path. He orders Haydée to tell Albert the truth. Reluctantly, Haydée reveals everything. She is a princess from Turkey, and her parents were murdered by Fernand, Albert's father. She admits she came to Paris for revenge. Hearing this, Albert is shocked and devastated. He turns on Edmond, believing he has been manipulated from the start. Burning with anger, Albert challenges Edmond to a duel at sunrise. Haydée begs Edmond not to accept, but Edmond does. For him, this is no longer about Albert. It is about Fernand. Edmond wants Fernand to know what it feels like to lose the child he loves most. That night, Mercedes arrives to confront the Count. She admits she has always suspected that the Count of Monte Cristo was really Edmond Dantes. She apologizes through tears, explaining that she married Fernand only after being told Edmond had died. Edmond quietly hands her the document signed by Fernand 20 years ago, the very testimony that sent him to prison and declared him dead. Mercedes begs Edmond not to take his revenge out on Albert, who has done nothing wrong. She pleads with him to punish her and Fernand instead. But Edmond refuses. He will see the duel through. The next morning, the duel between Albert and Edmond takes place. As the two men face each other, Albert raises his pistol with trembling hands. Edmond, calm and composed, fires first, but his shot intentionally misses. Albert stands frozen, stunned. The duel is over. Edmond turns and walks away, leaving Albert unharmed. Later, Edmond returns home to meet Haydée. It is revealed that Edmond spared Albert's life on purpose. At the same time, Edmond spreads false news throughout the city, letting everyone believe that Albert has died. With the world now assuming Albert is gone, Edmond urges Albert and Haydée to run far away together, to start a new life and find the happiness Edmond himself never had with Mercedes. Haydée is filled with relief and joy. At last, she can be with the man she loves, free from fear and revenge. Elsewhere, Mercedes, shattered by the truth of her husband's crimes, finally walks away from her toxic life. Fernand, now abandoned and consumed by fury, storms into the estate of the Count of Monte Cristo. Edmond appears to face him, no longer hiding behind a mask. Fernand finally realizes that the noble Count who ruined him was Edmond Dantes all along. Their confrontation erupts into a brutal sword fight. Steel clashes. Sparks fly. Edmond lands a decisive strike, cutting Fernand's blade in half and stabbing him in the stomach. But before Fernand collapses, he lunges forward and drives his own sword into Edmond. Wounded and in pain, Edmond refuses to fall. With sheer will, he rises again, pulls the blade from his body, and disarms Fernand completely. Now Fernand lies beaten and powerless at his feet. But Edmond does not deliver the final blow. Instead, he steps back. Fernand, he says, will live, but he will live with the suffering of having lost everything and everyone he ever loved. That is punishment enough. In the end, Edmond sails once more into the open sea. So the moral of the story is never mess with a sailor who's good at holding grudges, because he might come back 10 years later with treasure, disguises, and a master plan just to ruin your life.